Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the distance learning series here, hosted by Google for Education and run for us by the good folk at Using Technology Better. I'd like to introduce Paul Hamilton to us tonight. Hi, Paul.
Hey, everyone. Hey, Chris.
It's great that you could join us, Paul. You're coming to us from the Sunshine Coast, the beautiful Sunshine Coast, Queensland.
Yep, it sure is. It's still nice and warm here. I think 31 today, so yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. And we're doing a session today. Let me just bring up our slide like this. We're doing a little workshop this afternoon called Creating a Virtual Classroom Inside Google Sites. And I'm actually pretty excited to see what you cover in this because I'm intrigued by the title. So Paul, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you. And I will keep an eye on the comments. If there's anything I need to let you know, I will do that. And over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. And welcome, everyone. Can I start by saying thank you for joining us. It's late on a Thursday. It's probably been a really big week for you. And I am absolutely in awe of the time and effort and commitment teachers are putting in. And for you to come along on a Thursday night is a fantastic achievement. And as I said before, I'm just in awe of the commitment that teachers are putting in regard to their children at the center of what they're doing. So today's session is about creating a virtual classroom inside Google Sites, and I'm super excited to bring this to you because Google Sites is something that I love, and creating some virtual tours and virtual expeditions within Google Sites is incredibly doable and actually quite easy to do when you know what tools to use, and a couple of little things that will go along today. So if I go into the next slide and when we have a look at the content that we're actually bringing through, so on the next slide, it'll go through the actual kind of 4 or 5 elements of what we actually need. So Chris, are you there? Can you flick it on to the next slide if you can? Thanks, Chris. So these are a couple of things that we're going to do in this session. We're going to explore just Google Sites quickly. And in a minute, I'd love you to jump in the chat and just tell us your experience with Google Sites, whether you're a complete newbie, got a little bit of experience, you've dabbled in it, or whether you're an expert in Google Sites. That would be really good for me to know so I can customize this session a little bit for you. We're also going to explore something called Google Tour Creator, which I think you'll absolutely love in regard to the resources that are in there, but also what you can create with Google Tour Creator as a teacher. We're going to look at how we can make these kind of virtual tours interactive for our students. So we can create these things called information hotspots that I'd like to talk to you about, which is really exciting. And then we're going to embed that tool in Google Sites so our students can fully experience it, and they can also work with the collaborative tools in G Suite in regard to Google Docs and slides and Google Forms and so on. So they're kind of the 4 elements that we want to do today. And to be honest, I hope you've got your computers there, which you're obviously watching me on something, but I'm hoping that you've also got some Chrome tabs open, ready to go, because I'm going to stop at different stages and let you do this as well. I think as an educator myself, we all know that we learn by doing. And so if you can have a tab open, even if you're unfamiliar with these tools, I'll go nice and slowly. If you can have a go at it, I think we're going to come out of this session with some new skill sets going forward, which is incredibly exciting. So next slide there. Thanks, Chris. And so what we want to do is we want to explore, and I've got the 2 icons down the bottom there for Google Sites, but also Google Tour Creator, which is the one down the bottom on the right. Although we're kind of mainly in those, we're going to kind of bring in some of our favorite G Suite tools around it so that we can actually enhance this content that we're creating. So I'm really excited about creating engaging, authentic, interactive virtual tours, but I also want to bring in some of the collaborative things that Google does so well. So we'll kind of bring those in at the same time, if that makes sense. Thanks, Chris. So to start off, I know you're in the chat, so I can kind of see the chats on the side. I think one of the best things about webinars are making connections with other teachers. I'm sure Chris has done the same. I've done a lot of webinars over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And to see teachers connect with similar passions and similar problems that maybe that they're facing or little hurdles that they're facing, is really one of the best things about webinars. So can I ask you to do one thing for me in the chats for me? Just to introduce yourself, where you're from. Could you just give me a sentence or two about what experience you have with G Suite? Are you a novice? Are you kind of intermediate, or you're advanced in regard to some of those tools? And then finally, how much have you used Sites and Tour Creator? So if you could just jump into the comments there, just tell us a little bit about some of these. So I've got Sue that's talking about setting up Google Sites. Fantastic, Sue. David saying he's just dabbling so far. Fantastic. It's a great way to start, David. We've looked at Google Classroom, obviously, and G Suite. Fantastic. A lot of people are saying that they know Docs and Classroom really well, which is fantastic. So I kind of guess what I'm seeing here is we've got some of those fundamentals and those tools that we use quite a bit. But hopefully today we can learn a new little set of skills that might bring us forward, which is fantastic. Thank you so much for commenting. We've got some people that are absolutely beginners with Google Sites, so we'll go nice and slowly there.
And you've got people from all over the place too, Paul. You've got Sydney and more Sydney, another Sydney, Otago in New Zealand, Adelaide Hills,
fantastic,
Melbourne, all over the place.
And you New Zealand people, it's quite late there, so that's fantastic. So Amy's saying she's got some expertise in there, which is fantastic. Hopefully you can help out in the comments section if we're a little bit slow on the comments there, Amy. That would be great. Thank you so much for that. That really helps me kind of customize and kind of bring this and make this all about you guys, which is fantastic. Just the next slide, thanks, Chris. So hopefully we haven't got too many questions yet. Can I just bring your attention to something, because this session is going to be about me giving live demonstrations. So I think the best way you can see is not through a slideshow, but actually see me doing it. And then I'm going to stop after every 5 minutes or so and let you have a go at that as well. So I'm really hoping you've got those tabs ready to go. Can I just quickly, because we're not going to have time to go through this today, but we are looking at 360-degree images today. So 360-degree images is obviously that complete wraparound image going up right down to our toes, that full immersive 360 degrees. When I started out with Google Tour Creator and Google Sites, I didn't have a 360-degree camera. So what I used was my phone, and it's available on all platforms, but the Google Street View app is remarkably accurate and also detailed in creating 360-degree photos. So I've got a little kind of running sheet, and I'm not expecting you to do that now and go out and take a 360-degree view, but you'll get this presentation at the end of this as well, so you'll be able to look through these things. But it's incredibly easy to use, and all of a sudden you don't have to pay for really expensive 360-degree cameras. You can get the Google Street View app, basically press on the camera, create. It gives you little dots to go and hold your phone over at different dots, and it creates quite a detailed 360-degree photo. And I know a lot of people are thinking, I can't get into virtual reality. I don't have a really expensive video recorder or 360 GoPro or whatever it is. You can actually do it on your phone and you can get a really good result. So after this session or tomorrow, get out those phones and have a look at the Google Street View. And all you need to do is tap on the create, and it'll kind of walk you through the process. And it's incredibly easy to do. Next slide. Thanks, Chris. So don't think there's any questions. I think I'm ready to dive into the actual demonstration, which is fantastic. So I'm hoping that you've all got those Chrome tabs open and ready to go. I don't think we have any questions yet, Chris.
No, nothing. So if you want to bring up your screen, Paul, and I'll switch over
there. Yep. All right. Okay. So Chris is going to interrupt me if we've got any really big questions. Hopefully you can see my Google page here. And we're going to start with Google Sites. So if you're new, we had a few people new to Google Sites. We had a few people that are experts and few people kind of in between. So obviously if I go to my waffle here, we've got access to our Google Sites here. Okay, so I'm going to click on that and just go through a couple of things, and then I'm going to stop and give you some moments to create. Now, obviously here, we're kind of in the old version of Google Sites, and we can have access to the new Google Sites, which is often found on the left-hand side here. You can see my big mouse, my big pointer there that I've got through a Chrome extension there. Hopefully you can see that. So we're going to go to the new Google Sites. And I just want to talk this through quickly. There are some wonderful little templates at the top in your template galleries, and you can see that this is where some of my creations are kept. We want to create our new Google site from scratch today, so we're going to press on the plus, obviously, to get started. So we're in a new Google site, and we're going to get a little bit of a site set up so that we can start to play around with this concept of building some virtual tours within our site. So if you're new to Google Sites, you can see it's pretty self-explanatory, the different things, but let's go through a few things. I think it's always good to actually name our site. So I'm going to call this Year 4H, because that's kind of what I used to teach. So as a classroom teacher, so it kind of seems to come up by default. And I'm going to give my website a little name here, and we're going to call this VR Classroom. And we can play around a little bit with our anchor points there and play around with some different things there just to get it nice. Now I'm going to stop in a couple of minutes and let you do this, guys. So if you feel like you can't watch and do at the same time, just be a little bit patient and I'll give you some time, I promise. You can see here, I've got some formatting tools, which is great. We've also got themes. So we've got some categories over here on our menu. We've got insert, pages, and themes. If we go to themes, this is a good way of just selecting something nice and quickly with some color palettes that work well together. So I've got the name of my doc, I've got the name of my website here, and we've got a couple of different things. If we go to insert, that's where we can start building our content and start building out our website, obviously. And that's a really good thing to just have a little bit of a play around with and having a look at all the different things there. Best thing we can do if you're new to Google Sites is just have a bit of a play. You're not going to break anything. We can delete it as we go, which is fantastic. The next one next to insert says pages. And this is where we can insert pages, which we're going to do in a minute. The page could be like a link to a website, another website, or it could be just a new native kind of page within my website as well. And we've already looked at themes as well. So this is what I'd like us to do to start with, and I'll give you a couple of minutes to do this. We're going to set up our website so that we can start inserting some really engaging, authentic, and interactive virtual tours. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create a couple of pages. I've got my home page here. I'm going to create some new pages, which is the bottom one, not a link, but a new page. My second page is going to be about my school. So I might say, school tour. Now you can call your pages anything that you would like. Try and think about websites as something that a person will actually use to either get information or collaborate or learn something new. So I'm going to create there. If we click on the advanced, we've got some custom paths, which we won't delve into too much at the moment. We don't need to know too much about those paths. So now up the top here, you can see that I've got a new little tab or a new little menu system. So I've got the home, I've got school tour. We're going to create two more pages. One's going to be a science page where we're going to create a little science interactive virtual tour. And so we'll press done. And we might do one more. We might do the arts. We know that the arts are incredibly important. Let's create a little art page as well. And you can see at the top here, when I click on my little menus or my pages, sorry, to my website, it goes to each of those and it's automatically named the name of it, what the page was that I called, which is great. Kind of saves us doing that. Just quickly before I go to the next point, up at the cogs, up in our settings up here, we've got our navigation system. So if we actually want our navigation system to be on the side of our screen, you can see now that we've got like a little drop-down menu on the side. So that's up in the cogs. For this one, I think it's easier for us to see if it's just at the top. But that's how we create our 3 pages ready for some really interesting content going forward. So I'm going to stop and I'm just going to put my timer on, and Chris might jump in if there's any questions. I don't think there will be yet, but I'm just going to put my timer on for a couple of minutes. And if you've got your Chrome, if you've got a little Chrome tab or window open, give it 3 minutes, just so that you can actually do those and get those set up, because we do learn by doing. And so I just wanted to give you a little bit of time to get that going and ready to go.
Okay, that was nice and clearly explained, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. We will delve into some of those insert and those content that we can drag over in our website. But I think one of the first things as web developers do is they start to kind of look at that structure of their website. And I think sometimes creating the pages is a good way to get started when you're thinking about the structure of a website going forward.
Yeah, and I think your tip there about think of it like the user. Always put yourself in the position of the person who'll be using the site, because try and think like the user all the time. Like when you're naming a button, name it based on, as you say, what you would expect the user to look for.
Yeah, and we've got lots of people from all over the country and overseas as well. But I think one of the common denominators for the digital technologies curriculum is looking at the aspect of our kids as creators, but also thinking about the user as the end result. So what we create, whether it's a digital game or a digital website, is thinking about that user experience and that user interface, I guess, is what we're doing at the moment, of the end user. And in my case, for our case today, we're actually creating this for our students to interact with. So we've kind of got our students at the forefront of our mind when we're designing this. Yeah. It's just got a little bit over a minute to go.
I just popped the message up on the screen there. Roxana in the chat just put up a thing, said she said, can you show how to put the navigation on the site one more time? But then she immediately followed it up with a message that said she's worked it out. So,
oh, how good is that? I love that. Well how many times have we asked for questions and then we kind of send back those messages straight away and say, it's okay, I found it. Yeah, and that's terrific.
All the time.
Okay.
There's a number of principles we have at Google. The very first one that we adhere to all the time is always to think about it from the user's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a fantastic way. You know, I think we've all been on websites quite clearly, and we've been frustrated with parts of it. And that's often because we haven't got our architecture right, and we've actually haven't got our structure of our website right, as well as thinking about the user and what they have to get to and go through to get to the information that they need.
Yeah. All right, I'll hand back to you, mate.
Thank you very much. So we've got about 20 seconds to go, and I'm just going to
Paul,
delete that time.
Janine is asking, she says she doesn't seem to have the site's icon. So perhaps you could explain to her if she can't find that, what the plan B is.
Oh, okay. So if I just go back, I'm going to share, let me share another tab here just quickly, Chris. So if I go to and just search for Google, and I go to my waffle and I can't find it here, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can go a little bit further down and just see if it's kind of filtered down a little bit, is a good way. The other way that if you're already kind of logged in and just going to actually typing in Google Sites and actually searching for it.
Now, Roxana's jumped in again here to help out and said that the problem is likely to be the fact that Janine's school hasn't actually turned Google Sites on, so it could be turned off at the admin console. So that's worth pointing out too, that all of these Google services that your school has access to, the school can decide whether they enable them for you or not, and they may have just decided they're not enabling sites for whatever reason. You should definitely go and talk to them and say, turn it on, because
please talk to them. Please talk to them, because it's actually a brilliant tool that we need to use. And it'll be the same with Google Tour Creator too. So if we don't have access to that, this is probably not going to be as a doing activity as you would like. Right. But certainly talk to your administrators about getting those turned on. And right. I think it's certainly worthwhile actually going forward and kind of working on those things.
Yeah. If you don't have access to sites and you'd like to play along tonight, as Roxana suggested there, just use your personal Gmail account if you have one. And seriously, who doesn't have a personal Gmail account these days? All right, over to you, mate.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, using your own account and kind of jumping between accounts is probably something that we do quite a lot as teachers. And to be honest, I understand a lot of frustrations. I'm from Queensland, and we have a lot of things blocked in Queensland as well. So please talk to your administrators. tell them that you just saw a fantastic webinar. I really like to produce some interactive content for my students, and hopefully we can get that through, which is great. So over at the menu here, we're going to go back to insert, and we're just going to set up our website a little bit going forward so that we know what this is about. So we've got our home and we've got our VR classroom here. We've got a page that's a school tour. We've got a science page and we've got an art page. And so what we actually want to do is we want to create some content underneath here that is going to really engage our students, but also give them the information that they need and hopefully prompt a little bit of inquiry. So if we click on insert, you'll see that we've got some amazing tools just here that we can insert. We can embed YouTube, we can embed our calendars, and we're going to look at some of these after we do the virtual tour part. We're certainly going to look at Docs, and we're also going to look at Google Forms as well as a way of kind of adding to what we bring in. But that's all we're actually going to do at the moment in regard to our Google Sites. We've just basically created a new site, and we're now going to think about really adding some content to it that's going to engage our students through some virtual reality type media, which is often called mixed media as well. And we'll go forward with that. Just one more quick thing I need to show you before we jump out of Google Sites. And that is right at the top here. So obviously we've got our undo and our redo buttons. This one here is going to become very important because sometimes when we pull content over, we need to actually preview what it looks like. And so you can see there on my screen, it's actually a live website where we can see what it looks like, just like it's been published. And that's really important because some of the things might not show up until we actually preview them and have them in preview mode. You'll see down the bottom of preview mode too, you can actually look and see how it looks from if it was on a phone, for example. And you can see that my menu bar here is actually reduced on that because it's actually the size of a phone, and it's changed the orientation of it, and therefore it's changed some of the user interface, what we call the user interface of that view. So that's a really good thing to know. And to be honest, that's really great for the kids to know that when websites don't look great on phones, sometimes it's because they haven't enabled important design elements within that site to make it look good. And I love the fact that Google Sites does that and gives us that preview in different formats, which is fantastic. All right, so we've got Google Sites. We're now going to jump into Google Tour Creator. Now, I do want to show you one thing, is when we go into Google, let's go here. That's my calendar. That's pretty interesting. Let's go here just in a new tab. I want to go to Google. You may not find Google Tour Creator like we did with Google Sites. We might not find it down here, but that's okay because we can actually look for it in another means, and that's just by saying Google Tour Creator, and it will be the first one that pops up. You can see there that it's got Google VR, and that's the one that we're actually going to go to. So I'm going to get out of that and just go on here, which is this one, and it looks like this. And you can see that I can't see my waffle up here. It doesn't actually recognize me until I actually press on Get Started, which is a little bit interesting, but it doesn't recognize me here. But you can see here up the top, it's got arvr.google.com/tour creator. And if I click on this little tab here, it's got more creator tools. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Google have invested and created some amazing virtual reality products. Poly is where we're going to publish to today. Tilt Brush is an amazing application for virtual reality headsets like Oculus and so forth, and Blocks is a little bit the same. So Google have actually got some incredibly creative applications going forward. So I'm going to press on Get Started and see what my interface looks like a little bit here. Might take a little while on yours to actually come up. And we can talk through some of these. Can you see now that my waffle is actually turned up at the top here in Google Apps? So now I've still got access to all my favorite G Suite and tools and Google Tools, but it just took me to get started to actually get into that. So that's interesting. You can see here that I've got some tours that I've already created. I've done a little kind of mock-up real estate tour. I'm starting to play around with some human anatomy systems, and I've got a school visit here. We can create a new tour, which is what we're going to do. And we could grab a template. Now, there is so many great templates out there, and we'll definitely use one of them. But I thought the best thing for us to do to get started would be to create a new tour. So I'm going to create a new tour and see what we can create together. All right, so this looks pretty self-explanatory. It's got a title here that I can change. Now, if you can remember back to my school website, I did have a school tour. So I'm going to actually name this School VR Tour, because that's going to be my first virtual kind of 360 tour that I'm going to create. I'll just put, this is a tour of my school. And I think good practice says that we do fill in these things, even though we want to get started. And it also says here that we need to drop an image actually on there as well. And we actually need to do that. So on Chromebooks, actually, you click on it, it'll go to that drop down, the files, it'll go to your Google Drive, and you can absolutely upload something here. You might notice down the bottom here, it talks about Google Expeditions, and it's got a really good connection with Google Expeditions. If you've ever used a Google Cardboard, it's got a really good connection with this as well. You can create tours that can be viewed on phone as well, which is fantastic in a Google Cardboard headset. I'm going to select a category. And for this one, I might just say places and scenes. That kind of makes sense. Now, this is kind of my initial page. I haven't done anything much. I've just kind of got set up there in Google Tour Creator. And I'm going to press Create. Now, if you don't have access to Google Tour Creator, just be patient and just follow along, and maybe how it kind of logging in under a different account might be a good place. You can see on the left here, it's actually looking for a place for me to add to my scene. So I'm going to add my old school, which was Matthew Flinders. I'm hoping it pops up. Oh, right there. And you can see here that it's actually already got a 360-degree photo. Now, I actually think this was actually taken by someone at Google, Chris. I think, or maybe a past Google employee. I think Jim was a past employee, or still is an employee, sorry, at Google. So I've got a 360-degree image here that's been taken already of the school that I want. So I can search for anything. I could search for Moscow. I could search for the Eiffel Tower. I could search for anything at all. Or I do have an option of uploading my own 360-degree photo. Now, that's incredibly exciting because you could go out and actually do some mock-ups straight away and upload that straight from Google Street View, straight from the photo straight there. But I'm just going to add that scene. That could be a good starting point.
Just while you're adding that, Paul, I'll just jump in a second and just show people here. This little device I've got here, you can probably tell people what it is. I'm sure you know what that is.
Where are you? I can't see you, Chris. Hang on.
Oh, sorry. So
let me go back.
So this is a 360-degree camera. Yep. And these are relatively inexpensive. So if your school is interested in doing some 360 kind of work, these are readily obtainable. This is made by a company called Ricoh, same company that makes photocopiers. And this thing are about $300-400. So if you're looking for a 360 camera to take your own photos, it's quite doable.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chris. That's a really good tip, and they work incredibly well too. So we've got our phone access, we've got the really expensive ones, and we've kind of got those in-between models as well that we can kind of capture. So all I've done there is I've just pressed Add Scene. I've given it a bit of a description. And what you can see now that it's actually brought that photo into my Flinders tour scene. And I can actually scroll around and actually look at the different parts all around my screen, which is fantastic and really exciting. So I'm going to write a little description and say this is just a school tour. And I just want to talk about this point for a moment. It says add point of interest. Now, this is where we can make our VR tours interactive with our students. So if I press that, you can see that a little point has popped up here. So this little point here allows me to create what we call little hotspots or points of interest, where our students can touch on them and actually, or click on them or touch on them depending on devices and what kind of Chromebook they might have, to actually experience what that is about. So if I move that over to the oval and I actually name that oval and I describe it, this is where we play football. It now becomes more interactive because we've got a 360-degree view, but we've also got these interactive elements going forward. We can also add an image over the top, so we can have like an image overlay, and we can also add some site narration where we can include some audio files going forward as well. So I'm going to add one more point of interest, and this time I'm going to scroll around here and actually grab that second one and move it to over here. I probably should have moved there, shouldn't I, first before I said point of interest? That would have been smarter. And I'm going to list this. This is the central admin office. So I'll just say central office. And I'll put this is where you would report to for information. So we've got two little hotspots there. You can see that they've kind of just picked up there, two little hotspots. I can delete that scene at any stage. I'm certainly not going to do that, but I've got two little hotspots there, and I've only really got the one scene. Now, what's important to know about Google Tour Creator is we can actually create multiple scenes. We can actually go from scene to scene to scene, but I think that's enough just to show you the interactivity and also the ability to add those kind of hotspots or those points of interest. And you'll see these a lot in museums these days. You'll see these little hotspots, whether they be on physical displays or on phones where you kind of walk through and you can actually hear audio narration over the top. These kind of elements to virtual reality are really important to really immerse your students going forward. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think I'm going to just go with that at the moment so we can actually see what that might look like in our Google site going forward. So we're going to do that again later on. So if you missed that, we're going to do that again. But it's a simple case of going, create new tour, finding your image, and we'll go through this again, and then we're going to publish it going forward. So I'm going to go through that. Before I publish that one, I'm going to go back home, and hopefully that has saved it here. You can see here that it's got draft. See here, it's got draft. And before I give you a couple of minutes to have a go at Tour Creator, I'll just go through those steps really quickly and at really fast speed. We just click on New Tour. We find an image. I might just make this one test. Put in a description and press Create. When you're on Street View, search for a place and add scene. So I'm going to stop there and just give you maybe 2 minutes, if I can give you 2 minutes, just to have a bit of a play. If you want to keep building your Google site just for a second and get that ready to go, because we're going to insert some things, that's fine as well. But I think it's important that I just break now and just give you a little bit of time to play with Google Tour Creator. So I'll just put a couple of minutes on the clock for you.
That's good. You know, the thing I like most about, well, not there's lots of things I like most about it. But one of the things that's really neat about it, Paul, is that what you just showed there, how to create a new scene, how to add a point of interest, that's basically it. Everything there is rinse and repeat. Once you know those couple of skills, it's a matter of just repeating them as many times as you want. And I guess there's the other things there that you haven't really touched on yet, and that is if you'd like to add an image or a sound effect to one of those points. But really, once you know that small handful of skills, building a really complex tour is just repeating that over and over again.
It is, Chris. Yeah, you're spot on. And we'll talk a little bit if we have time about adding images and so forth. There's been some amazing work that people have kind of layered and as a form of digital storytelling, and some amazing things that we put in tours that you wouldn't really think, oh, I don't think it's made for that. But teachers continue to push boundaries in regard to creativity with this sort of stuff, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got, just while people are working there's a couple of questions that have popped up here, or statements.
Yeah.
Francine says this is great. She's been wanting to know about this for a long time, and she can't wait to share it with students. It's awesome to hear. Thanks, Francine. But Sue Latty has a question here. It's more to do with sites than Tour Creator. It's this one here. Can we change to a specific font and colors or images back in Google Sites?
Oh, well, we're about to jump back in there, Chris, so we might actually answer that question first up. So what was that again? Just changing fonts and changing
changing fonts and colors and stuff inside the site.
Awesome. Love to go through that. That's great. Okay, I'm going to keep going. I think people are ready to keep going.
Yeah,
so I'm going to hit the little cross here. I'll remove my timer. Here we go. So all right, let's do this. So I'm going to jump back into my draft. Now, when I jump back into my draft, yes, this was my test one. Yeah, this was it. No, this was the test one. I apologize. I'm going to go back because I wanted my school one. Sorry, I uploaded the same G Suite thing. School VR tour. That's the one I wanted. Okay, I apologize. Okay, so I've got my school tour. Yep, that's all looking great. Let me just check that first scene. Down the bottom here, I can check that Flinders tour scene. Yep, that's looking good. Have I got the hotspots? Yeah, I've got hotspots down here. Okay, that's all looking really good, and we're going to publish this now. And so obviously for a VR tour to work and to share with others and to actually get it in our site, we need to publish it. And the thing that I just wanted to quickly talk to you guys about was when we publish something like this, that's a 360-degree image with interactivity, we're not going to be able to publish it just to a normal photo gallery somewhere. It's going to need something special. So Google has made what we call Google Poly, and it's actually what we make in Tour Creator too. So it says here, I'm going to publish it to Poly. So I'm going to click on that once, and let's have a look at what we can do. So we could make this public to the world, or we could make it unlisted. That's completely up to you. If it's unlisted, it's still okay, and it can still come up on your Google site, but people won't be able to find it on general public when they search for it in tours or expeditions or Poly itself. So I'm going to click unlisted for this one, and I'm going to select publish. And what that'll do is it'll put all that together, and it says, would you like to view this tour? Absolutely, I would. So I'm going to click view tour, and it opens up a new tab for me. And this is kind of, if you can think about it, this is being published now. This is not edit mode. This now is in Poly. It's public. If I've got the link, I could link this to you guys right now in the chat, and you could have a look at it. In fact, I will do that at some stage. I'll actually put that in so you can have a look at it, and you can see how interactive it is. I can look up and down, and now if I click on the hotspot, it comes up with that navigation, that point of interest where all the information is. If I attached a audio file and an image, it would also layer it up. And as soon as I look around, you can see there that my other hotspot is there as well. Now you can imagine this with our Google Cardboard and actually putting on that fully immersive VR. We're putting it in a Google site, but you can actually watch Poly in a range of different ways.
Yeah, and you probably can't see me there, Paul, but I'm actually holding up the, it's actually not Cardboard, it's the slightly fancier version. It's the sort of more, well, it's a fancier version of Cardboard. But the same idea, you open it up, you put your phone in there and close it up, and then you can put this up to your face, and things like that just become an immersive tour straight in here. And the neat thing about it, as you'll probably mention, is that it goes straight to the Expeditions app.
Yeah. So down the bottom of my screen at the moment, it says it works with Google Expeditions. And so you're absolutely able to find this in a range of different ways, which is great. Now we're up to the magical part. I think this is pretty magical. We've got this amazing immersive experience that we want to put in our Google site because it's like a school tour. So if we go down the bottom here and go to share, if I copy that, that's just the web link, and that's great. I could share it to Google Expeditions, which is great, and Twitter and Facebook, but I'm actually going to go to the embed tool here. And I'm going to control copy that so that I've got that embedded code. For those people that don't know about embedded codes, this will allow this website to play within Windows and inside kind of website windows like Google Sites and so forth, without all of the kind of messiness of trying to get all the code with it. It kind of comes with the code basically. So if I go back now to my 4H, certainly don't want to put it in the science category. If I go over here to my school tour, I wonder which one will press. So I'm looking at insert. Insert makes sense. If I just leave it there, let's hope someone in the chat tells me. I've got some prompts happening. Yep, it's embed. So I'm going to embed that in my website. So if I press that once, it says, do you want to embed it by the URL, which is just there, or do you want the embedded code? The embedded code is much better because what it does is it makes it run beautifully and I don't have to get out of the window. So if I press next, it gives me a little preview. Hopefully that will go away in a second. Perfect. Hasn't loaded yet. And I'm going to insert it anyway because I'm impatient and I'm hoping this works. Maybe I needed to make it public, but we'll see how we go. Give it a bit of time. If you're like me, you're a little bit impatient. And so what we've got there, and I might just refresh my page, see if that works. If not, I'll try one more thing. And I'll give it a minute. There it is there. Okay, so that was good perseverance. We love perseverance. And the beauty about this, because we're still in Google Sites in our edit mode, I really would like to look at the preview window. So if I click on preview window now, hopefully it'll give me the kind of experience that I'd actually like it to give me. So I'll make that, I'll come down the page a little bit and look at that. I've got the Google tour. I've got down the bottom here, I've got myself who made it with the Google tour, and I've got my hotspots all beautifully built in that I can interact with. As an educator, and if we have our students making these, or if I'm making these hotspots or these points of interest could be absolutely anything. Let's think about tech design in secondary school. Let's talk about shapes in primary school, identifying shapes around buildings and different things like that. It could be a range of different areas, science, descriptive writing. We could use this interactivity and this immersive kind of content for absolutely any subject at all. We're using it for a little bit of a boring kind of school tour, but it's incredibly, what we can do with it is very durable. We can actually kind of use it in a whole lot of different contexts and applications going forward. And so that's looking really great, and I'm really happy with that. So we've kind of done the school tour bit, and I did want to show you about the colors, didn't I?
You did. And we've got some other questions too. So how about you talk about those colors, and then we'll get into some of these other questions.
Yeah. So we've got some different formatting tools up the top here. We've got our title and some different things that we can actually change the text, that sort of thing here. We can obviously go back to themes as well. We've got a range of different things in regard to what we can do with links, whole range of different things. We did talk about themes, didn't we? If I go back to here. So we've got some basic formatting tools that we can actually use and kind of play around with as well.
Yeah.
We've got our pages that we can actually kind of play around with, which I haven't talked to you about, sub-pages and some different things. But we can actually do some things here in regard to hiding navigation, creating sub-pages and things like that in Google Sites as well.
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm just putting Sue's question back up there again. I think, Sue, if I understand your question, if you want to change to a specific color, so for example, if you want to select a piece of text and make it a particular font or a particular color, you can't really do that. And that's not a design fault. That's actually a design. That's actually by design that it's like that.
Yeah.
One of the things, as Paul, I'm sure you'd attest with web pages, is the thing that really makes it work for users is if it's consistent. It's a consistent experience as you move from page to page. If every page looks different, then it gets a very confusing mess for users. So by design, Sites tries to keep a very consistent set of fonts and colors, and therefore it actually doesn't give you a whole bunch of control over that. And that's definitely by design. It's not a flaw. It's a, what do I say? It's not a bug. It's a benefit.
They're forcing you into good design, aren't they, Chris? But don't forget, there's always little ways around that. If you've got some graphics and you want to do some, say, some Google drawings that you want to bring in with specific fonts, we can bring those in as images. And if you're thinking, I really want some sort of heading with a particular look and feel about it, we could actually layer that as an image and you could create your own graphic design headings. And there are always little workarounds in regard to that sort of aspect as well. So,
Now, I have another question from Sue as well. And Sue says, how do you make your Google Sites private for a specific class without everyone seeing it and having access to it? So it sounds like she really wants just for the kids to have a good ability to see it.
Absolutely. So obviously we've got, we went through our little cog in regard to our images and so forth. We've got our little share aspect up here. And if I click on that, we can see, hopefully you can see a similar sort of permissions kind of window and settings window that we can actually use. So we've got here who can access that, and we can change and modify that, and you can actually make it specific for people in your organization, or you can really have it private as well. Okay, so that's kind of, it's very similar without anything that you know about other Google Docs and other applications with actually sharing. It's the same sort of thing in regard to permissions and who you can share that with. I haven't actually published this yet either, which I'll go through in a minute.
Yeah. If you made it unlisted and simply gave your kids the address, then they'd have access to it. If you really wanted it to only be your kids, you could always just share it with them individually by name only.
Which is, absolutely up here as well. And if you've got some groups set up, you could actually, I guess, send it to a group as well, Chris.
Absolutely.
I know at my past school, we had little group setups where it was all of year 6 and it just kind of gave them access nice and quickly in regard to those aspects. So we, from an admin point of view, you can set those things up. Just while that question's there, I might just go into that publish aspect, because I'm just sitting here thinking I actually haven't published this yet. So it might help if I do publish that going forward. This gives us a web address, remembering it doesn't give you a year4h.com kind of web address. It's connected to your domain that you're actually kind of working with and your thing, but you can kind of modify that a little bit in regard to what you might like it to call at the end of your domain going forward as well. I'm just going to publish that to see how that goes. All right, so to be honest, that's pretty cool. It's got a little scrolling effect there as well, which is nice. And remember, I really need to preview it to get the full experience, so I don't have this kind of editing aspect of it. It's looking really great in a preview window. If I actually just look at it again, because I'm pretty happy with it, to be honest. It's looking amazing. And this is so simple and easy to do, guys. So as that comes up, you can see there, it's got my little kind of profile pic. You as the teacher can come up, and I've got different scenes. And you can see here, because I've only got the one scene, it doesn't allow me to go to the next scene, but I can go to the next scene as well. So that's just a little setup. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. We're going to have a look at let's look at the science. Now, we're not going to create this one from scratch. We're going to use a template, because I wanted to show you the amazing content that is also in Google Tool Creator. So I'm going to get rid of that one. Go back here. and I publish that to Polly. Hopefully you're learning some new kind of places to put things and different things here. So I'm back at my page here, everyone. And last time we created a new tour, which I think is really, really important because it gives you all the skills of finding an image, 360 image, adding it to a scene and adding hotspots. But look what happens when you click templates. Now we've got basically Google Expedition tours at our fingertips. And not only that, we can modify them. So let's take a look at one of them. Oh, gee, I think it was a science page we were on. Look at all these wonderful, oh, these are amazing. I'm going to go with the eyes. This looks spectacular. I'm going to click on this as a template. Now, when I clicked on it, I'll be nice and patient. And can you see that it's opened up in Polly, but it's opened up on that first page like I did when I was creating it. So this is now my tour. So I could say, I might put 4H there, make it customized so my students think I'm really special and I created this. But I can actually create this tour here and I can change this if I wanted to. I might put some questions in. I can put definitely can put a category in there, which I think we had science. That kind of makes sense. And then down the bottom, I'm not going to publish it yet. I'm still in edit mode. We can go to the different pages. And can you see that it already has hotspots? So I'm clicking on the different scenes down the bottom that were incredibly, well, professionally made. Look at that. That is amazing. And so what we could do is we could actually add our own hotspot. Let's go down to the first one, the visible. Let's go to here. And let's add our own point of interest where we can actually add a question. So I might put question 1. And I might describe that and say, what connection can you make? It's a very brief question, but what it's actually doing is actually creating that interactivity, which I wanted to show you. So all of a sudden we've gone to templates and we've actually manipulating and changing the structure of what's already there to suit us a little bit more. So if I actually publish that, the eyes for H, let's make it just unlisted again, and I'll publish that. Hopefully you can see that this is the same thing, a little bit like Chris mentioned in regard to just redoing the same thing. I'm going to view that tour in Polly. I can see that it's changed it. That's pretty good. And hopefully you can remember the next step. Now, that was the hotspot I think that I created. So I'm just going to click on that. No, it wasn't. Was it that one? No, it wasn't. I'm looking for it. I'm pretty sure I made one of these a question. I'm going to find it later on. I've got it there somewhere. I'm sure of it. It wasn't down there, was it?
I think you can just scroll down a bit in that.
Where was it, Chris? I'm totally lost in my VR here.
That's all right. That one? It's the top one, but then scroll down in that box.
This one here?
In the text box.
Oh, sorry. I gotcha. So another way of actually looking for it, if you can't find it, is you can actually go to the question and it will go straight to the actual hotspot there. I was looking for it manually when you can look at it down the side there as well. So if I click on that, hopefully it gives us the optical windows and the different things that are there. So if you can remember from last time, what did we do? How did we get it into our Google Sites? Well, we wanted to share it. We wanted to go to the embedded feature. We wanted Control-C for a Chromebook. And we wanted to put that in our science, and it's an embedded one here. And I'm just going to copy that in. Give it a sec and insert. And once again, these little kind of anchor points, these little frames that we can pull out, you can make those as big as you want depending on your website and your design. And we'll just preview that as well. Preview is like the testing part of digital technologies, isn't it? It's that aspect where you test it, you refine it, you fix it, you debug it, and you kind of go from there. And you can see there that I've got my beautiful VR, including multiple scenes. And I'm just going to let that load with all of the interactivity. Look at that. Now, for you as a teacher to create some immersive content like this that's engaging and interactive, all of a sudden brings so many possibilities with our students not saying, I finished that task, now what do I do? But we can actually add some open-ended questions that really engage our students to, I guess, dig deeply into the content that we're actually providing our students going forward. I might just stop there to see if there's any questions. Chris, I'm not sure if there is or not.
Sure. There's a couple of questions and a couple of statements.
Yep.
I particularly like this one from Francine, where she says, this is the most exciting thing to happen in lockdown.
Well, that's the most exciting thing I've heard all week, Chris. That's good.
And Sue was asking a whole bunch of questions earlier, and she's just popped in here. Thank you so much. You've answered my questions beautifully, so that's pretty good.
Oh, wonderful. That's awesome. Okay.
There are a couple of people commenting on the fact that they're having trouble getting into Tour Creator. And Tracy in particular is saying here, it says that when she tries to go to it, she gets a message saying the administrator needs to, what does it say? The organization administrator to gain access. So she needs to contact them. And that's typically, it just means that within your school, this is just one of the services that they haven't turned on.
Yep. And so definitely have a play if you've got another account, but I also would love you to kind of force that issue with the administrators as well, because if they don't, sometimes administrators don't know the tools are actually there to start with. And so you bringing them up and saying this is a really worthwhile tool will actually introduce them to it as well.
Absolutely. That's normally the case. There's one other question here again from Sue. She says, can you get an embed code from YouTube? And I think what she's asking here is like, is this embed code thing that you're showing, is this kind of a common thing on the internet? Does it exist in other places?
Is that Sue, Chris? Is that her name, Sue?
Sue.
Yes. So Sue, the answer is absolutely yes. So whether you're looking at YouTube or whether you're looking at Vimeo or whether you're looking at a whole range of different things, 3D objects, you'll find that the embedded code, when you have access to it, will be able to be inserted into websites really, really well. Don't forget, though, we do have some other, we've got some beautiful, almost automatic embedding tools done there with YouTube as well. But Chris, you'll know in the old days when we were building, the old websites and so forth, we were using kind of those embedded codes quite a lot, and we could never get them right, and they always used to not come out properly in the frames as well.
I don't know what you're talking about, the old days. I'm not sure what you mean by
that. Sorry. I apologize. It seems like yesterday for me, but anyway, that's okay. That's all good. So you're absolutely right, Sue, in knowing about embedded codes and actually copy pasting them into certain things that will allow it will give you a really seamless approach to viewing content online, which is great.
Paul, just before you move on, there's another question here from Francine. I think it's a really good question. Can students add to a VR tour? And she says, so when you do the sharing settings, can you add in a Ken edit on a VR tour?
Do you know what? That is an absolutely brilliant question. And I'm about to explore that right now. Can I just say, from my experience, the answer to that is no, because when you publish it to Poly, you almost have to download again, make a copy, and then republish, Chris, if that makes sense. It doesn't work like a normal Google Doc. If I just get out of this for a second, you can see here that it doesn't give me a lot of options. I can get back to my Google Apps, but it's not so much a collaborative tool like you would use with a Google Doc. You could certainly share it with them. They could grab and they could, like I did with the Science Eye Tour, they could definitely add their own. But in regard to kind of collaborating in that kind of live space and that collaborative space, probably not, Chris. I would imagine.
It's not really collaborative in the same sense that, say, Google Docs or something is. Google Sites,
I tell you what,
but
Google Sites is and we're gonna make it collaborative. We've still got a little bit to go, and I really want to make it collaborative. That's going to be an important part to this going forward. I just wanted to show you.
Before you do that, can I just throw one more question to you, because it's kind of relevant to where you are right now? Roxana is asking, what about the copyright issue if you use embed code? Is there any legalities about taking somebody else's stuff? using it.
Yeah, so most of those, if I can go back to that first image where I grabbed that image off Matthew Flinders of my old school and so forth, most of the permission rights enable you to actually grab them and repost them, because by uploading them to Google in that regard, that we can actually reuse those. Chris, you might know more about it, but that's my perception of those 360 when we can view them on the tours.
I will put my not a lawyer hat on here, but I do believe that if you take something and then contribute it to the body of 360 images that exist out there, you're essentially sort of putting it into not the public domain, but you're sort of allowing other people to have access to it.
Yeah. And I think, once again, using kind of these and embedding them as well is a good way of kind of recognizing those different things as well. Yep, excellent. Can I just quickly show you, a lot of schools these days have a lot of these VR headsets. And one of the, if I just go into Poly and just do a little bit of a search on Tilt Brush Art, which Tilt Brush is another amazing example of a creative tool that Google has put out. These are all, I know in my last school we had some Oculus Quests, and we were doing, my students were doing some VR art, and they were creating these in Tilt Brush, and it was phenomenal seeing them actually create. These are also published to Poly as well. And look at that. I'm not sure how that's coming through, but this is a 3D piece of artwork that was drawn with drawing tools that you can also bring in. So if I went to share, embedded.
Wow. I'd never considered doing this. This is a great idea.
Yeah. And I tell you what else, the thing that I love. So if I go to my art page, there was a reason why I did that. Let's go up the top here and I put embedded. How about this for an art study for your students in regard to selecting some artwork to embed, insert, and having those questions, collaborative docs that we'll jump into really quickly before we run out of time. Let's just see how that previews. I might make that a little bit bigger. Some of these really do need some extra size just to view. And I'm just going to go to preview and see how that art page looks. And you can see here, when that loads, is you've got this amazing, beautiful, that you can zoom. I forgot to say, we can zoom in and out of these things. We can actually kind of get that aspect of looking at minute detail in artworks and how they created it and the techniques by just zooming in and out.
How are you doing the zooming out, Paul?
I've actually got a mouse that's connected to my Chromebook here, Chris. So I'm actually using my mouse. But we've got some different, you could help me out there, Chris. On a Chromebook, we're looking at Control Z, is it?
Oh, I just normally use 2 fingers on the trackpad. Just
oh,
two
do
fingers.
you? Yeah, I think there's a short. I'll have to get back to my shortcuts as well. I have to have a look at my shortcuts.
Yeah, or if you've got a mouse, just the scroll wheel tends to do it.
Yeah, I'm doing my scroll wheel at the moment. But isn't that a way that we can look at detail in artwork, where before artwork was very two-dimensional, and we can start to look at layers and kind of jump into those different aspects of it, which is incredibly exciting to have this content at our fingertips, I guess, as teachers.
Yeah.
And I want to finish because I'm looking at the time and it's kind of ticking along here. I want to finish with.
You've got till 9, so there's no rush.
Oh, we're okay.
Yeah, we're good.
What we love about Google and G Suite Tools is that collaborative feature that we talked about before. And so a lot of this, we're publishing it. We're trying to make it interactive with our links, our hotspots, and our points of interest. But what if we wanted to take it further? Let's go back to our school tour page. And we've got, I'll just delete this, by the way. We haven't really gone through a lot of Google Sites stuff, actually, but by just putting our cursor over the top here, we can move these things up and down, by the way. It's super. If you've never used Google Sites before, it is super easy to use and to delete sections and change different color palettes and so forth, which is great. But we've got this beautiful tour of my old school here, and I'm wondering how we could make this collaborative. So let's dig into some of these G Suite tools that we can use with it. I'm going to start with Forms. Now, if you've never used Google Forms before, you're missing out. They're absolutely brilliant. And what this does is, because I'm logged into my account, it's looking for my Google Forms. Now, I might want a form here to actually use with my students. So I've actually created what's called a school bot, which is an automated kind of machine learning AI type bot. If you haven't used Google Forms before, you can actually, when the user actually puts in a response to the questionnaire or the survey question, it takes them to another part. So if I click that once and press insert, not only do I have a beautiful tour here, interactive with points of interest, but I've also got a questionnaire that my user, remember we talked about the user end, who's actually using this, that could actually answer these questions. So it's not a great questionnaire because I use this for another webinar, but you can actually see that it's quite interactive. So if I press preview of my site now, and if I scroll down, I've got my live embedded Google form. What would I like to learn about? Oh, let's say the tuck shop, and I press next. It'll take me and I can submit my form, but I could have a questionnaire about the tour and the hotspots and what I'm actually learning about. So we can embed these Google tools, these Google Forms and Google Docs and Google Slides basically in our sites really effectively. And I'll give you another example of how that might look. So if I go to let's go to the art page, which is looking really great, and I'll get out of my preview. What we can also do is just underneath this beautiful artwork here, let's have a go at embedding a Google Doc. So I'm going to click on Doc. It will search my Google Drive. And I'm hoping, it's called Thinking. And I'm going to insert this underneath, and this could become my activity for my students. So one of the best things I ever did as an educator was learn about the visible thinking routines, the work out of Project Zero in Harvard. And so we can have a little questionnaire here or a Google Doc here that we've split up into a little table that has our students' name. Now, the students, if we make it editable, the students can put their names in there, but we can also have a little question at the top, and we can actually preview that, and we can watch as our students put in those collaborative docs as we go through. So I'll just show you what that looks like. You can see that students are starting to put there as well. So they're actually kind of in the doc and they're putting in, and we can also add comments, and we can do a range of different things from the back end. So we've kind of got this view here. I'm not sure if I have made it editable or not at this stage, so I need to make that editable, but the students can actually edit within that doc itself, which is pretty amazing. And if you have your questions about this amazing content that I'm scrolling around here, you can imagine the kind of the engagement factor there that we can actually start to involve. We've got our students no longer just looking at content, but actually scrolling and clicking on content, clicking on hotspots and points of interest. And then we've got embedded our collaborative docs in there as well. So all of a sudden, we've got a range of different kind of collaborative features going forward there. I might just stop and see if there's any questions. Chris, I've certainly gone through a little bit of content there going through.
You certainly have. You certainly have. There's actually no new questions, but there is a couple of people have said about this issue of not being able to access Tour Creator. So I just want to now I'm going to show you something that I don't want it to scare you, but if I just show you my screen, I'm just popping my screen up there.
Yep.
This is called the admin console. If you're a teacher, you never see this, right? But here's what you got to do if you don't have Tour Creator. Go and speak to your administrator and tell them you need Tour Creator turned on. Tell them how cool it is. And all they need to do is they simply scroll down here. You'll see there's Tour Creator at the bottom there. All they need to do is, you can see how it says turned off. The administrator just needs to tick that box and go up here and say on, and they turn it on. And just agree to the terms and conditions and say turn on. And it's that simple. And so once you do that, once your administrator does that, it's now on for your school. So if you don't have it, it's not a complicated process to get it turned on. Just wanted to point that out. Back to you, Paul.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I understand your frustration. I guess if I didn't have access to Tool Creator 2, I'd be a little bit cranky as well. So absolutely, please hit them up, do something about it, put a little proposal in if they come back at you, and see if you can actually get it there. A couple of other things that you might like to just add to some of the tools that we've created. So we've got these interactive elements here. Some of the things that we might be able to add in regard to just kind of beefing up a little bit the content that we're bringing on here. So we've got our school bot here. One of the features that I love is adding maps as well. So if I look there and just look for Matthew Flinders again, just bear with me, Anglican College there. And obviously we've got satellites, or we've got maps themselves. So I might actually look for the satellite there. And I'll make that a little bit bigger. There's some really nice features in regard to Google Sites in regard to how that looks when we preview it. So there were some questions about embedding content. And obviously when we go to preview, and I hope I've kind of modeled that, keep going back to preview to see how it looks from a user's point of view. There's some really nice aspects in regard to the maps that we embed here as well. So you can see here, it's not a static map. It's actually, I can zoom in and out, and I can actually move around, and I can use my different tools to look at different elements and where that school is. And I can kind of switch between satellite as well. And so all of a sudden, that whole aspect of geography and location and all those key curriculum areas that whatever content you're doing, whether it's a literary study on a famous author, embedding maps where that author came from and where they might have got inspiration for writing their novel or their picture book. If you looked at someone like Roald Dahl or James Marsden or John Marsden or any of those sort of people, you can actually see that we can include some of this great content to highlight, to kind of complement the work that you're doing with different units of study across the curriculum. So I hope you don't see this as just being something that we do a virtual tour for, that we can definitely embed some of these amazing Google collaborative tools in there as well. Got a question there.
My experience with kids and working with media like this, where they're making websites and creating graphics and designing sort of 360s, like it's so engaging for kids to do.
Yep. Yeah, you're spot on, Chris. And I think when it's one thing for us teachers to finally get the tools we need, but when you deliver the tools to the children and watch them create with what we've just done today, it's just, the possibilities are limitless, basically. So it's one thing,
especially if teachers, sometimes teachers, I think as teachers, we think, oh, we need to know how to do this before we get our kids to do it. And I think, like, I don't know, I'm sure you've had the same experience as me, that like, so long as you know this stuff exists and you know where to direct yourself to find it, you give it to the kids, and then it's like, get out of my way. Right, just stop annoying me now. I just want to get on and do this. And they don't really need you to explain everything. They figure this stuff out.
They do. And I think if you build into, just building on that, Chris, if you can build into your structure of your lessons with your students, where you allow 2 or 3 students at the start of the lesson, at the end of the lesson, to get up and show them something that they've found, and you collaboratively learn from each other, it breaks down that barrier of that teacher being up at the front all the time and being a wealth of knowledge when we're actually learning this thing together. And I think that's a really important aspect.
100%. You want to do a couple of quick fire questions?
Yeah, I'd love to, because I'm almost done, basically, Chris. So I'd love to hear some questions.
Okay, well, why don't you finish up and then we'll do the quick fire questions.
Okay, so before I finish, if we could just go back to the slide. Where am I? Can we go back to the slides just quickly, Chris, and then I can bring.
Sure.
I'm not sure how I'm looking at this time of night, but anyway, there's something there. Yeah. So before we just have a look at the feedback form there, and I'll just direct you to a little feedback form. We'd really appreciate Chris and I'd appreciate any feedback that you've got. We've already got some of that feedback about not having access to Tool Creator. I fully understand your frustration there. But yeah, if you've got any general questions or maybe even spin-offs, if there's anything about Tilt Brush or something that you've kind of just dabbled with today and you'd like to know more about, I'm going to go over to the live comments. I can actually look at that now, Chris. Here we go.
You can pop them down there. And just while people are thinking, I'll fire some of these questions at you. It's good to see that Sue says she has just emailed her IT department to access this. Sue's a woman of action. It's good to see.
We love it, Sue. We love it.
Yeah. Mick is asking, so you share the Google Doc and it works, or do you share the site to get the collaboration? I'm assuming what Mick means there is if you embed something inside a site's page, do you have to do anything to the share settings of that thing you embed?
The thing you embed is the key for the permissions. So that doc that I had with the table with the student names in it, that's the crucial bit. So you need to give editing rights for the kids to type in that. The Google site itself is just kind of feeding that through, is my understanding of. Yep.
That's correct. Yeah. So if you take any document, a doc or a sheet or a slide or anything else, and you embed it into a site's page, then you have to worry about A, people have the permission to see the site, but B, people have the permission to see the object that's embedded in there. So if the thing that's embedded into the page doesn't have view access, all they'll see is a blank space rather than the object, because they don't have rights to see the object.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Chris.
That's all right. Another question here. Oh, yeah, yes, sorry. That was a question from Louise. With the form, when someone answers the questions and submits, does it just come to you as the creator?
Yeah, so if you've created that, by the way, if you haven't had a play with forms, please do. The stuff that you can do with forms is quite phenomenal. So it's fantastic, Louise. So basically you set up, it spits it all out in a beautiful Google Sheet. You can do your graphs with your responses. You can look at individual responses. I didn't get into Google Forms too much. It wasn't kind of the essence of this webinar. But if you get a chance to look at a webinar just on Google Forms and look at the settings and what you can actually receive from your students, it's really quite phenomenal. So when they've filled that questionnaire in, or that survey, the Google form, it spits it out to you as the creator. And don't forget, it's not just multiple choice. You can get short answer, paragraph answers, a range of different data coming into you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question here from Tunde. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name, Tunde. I created a street view, but how do I get it into the sites page? So I know you've showed that, Paul. Do you just want to just do that one more time? I'll bring your screen back.
Can I get back here, Chris? And just help me out a little bit if this is not, I think, let me just quickly, if I go to...
So I think go back to the site, if I understand the question correctly.
He wants to put, just Google Maps into a site. Was that correct?
Well, I think, and sorry, I'm not sure, Tunde, if you're man or woman.
I'm going to show both, Chris. I can show both. Let me show both. Yeah,
I think the question is, if you make your own VR, how do you get your own VR? Because you were pulling them out of the Street View there, right?
Yeah. Let me quickly show you. So if I went down, this is my first one, the school VR tour. If I add a scene, I can upload one of my images here. So if I've actually got an image on my device, that's probably what I think he's talking about, Chris.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. So if you've created the image and you've now got that VR file stored in Google Drive, usually, you can click on that upload button, go and grab it from Google Drive and drop it straight in.
And it'll look very funny. It should look very funny in your camera roll because it's a 360. So it'll look all squashed and a little bit distorted and morphed. They're the ones you're looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Good question.
Great question.
Ruxana wants to know where she can find some Google Form templates.
Oh, can I jump into Google Form quickly and maybe Chris? Do I have time?
Yeah. Sure. Why not? Yeah.
Let's jump in. Let me just jump in here. Actually, I've got a lot of Poly open today, so that's okay. Let me just quickly go to Google and show us forms. Can I go past it? It's late at night. Yeah, I think I saw it further down here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we've got some. You can see here how much I use it immensely. Exit tickets, assessment. You probably know a lot about this too, Chris. But worksheets. There's a lot of love the exit tickets and some templates there. You can get blank quizzes. There's a template gallery here as well. Your organization can create their own templates as well in regard to different things. Chris, do you know any more about other places and different aspects to that?
That's what I was going to suggest. Yeah, there's a whole bunch built in there. If you go to, if you just launch forms from inside Google Drive even, and you see there's an option to go to templates.
The great thing about forms too is once you've actually got a nice structure for your form and kind of your questions, you find yourself duplicating it and just changing aspects of it because you kind of know it works. So all of a sudden you kind of build your own templates, if that makes sense going forward.
Absolutely. We've got about 10 minutes to go, Paul, but I'm sure being so late at night, I'm sure, especially in New Zealand, people wouldn't be averse to an early mark, I don't think.
No.
So I think we've covered pretty much. Roxana's asking, is there a webinar on forms? I don't know if there is. We've got best practice for managing Chromebooks and engaging literacy lessons. In fact, I'll just give you guys the link to this. So if you go to this page, the Distance Learning Series, that website that I've just put up on the address there, bit.ly/distance learning series ANZ, with funny capitalization. The web page there will actually give you a list of all the different sessions that are coming up. There may be something on forms there. Sometimes forms are sort of hidden in the title. It's not totally obvious about forms, but
I know, Chris, I've got a couple coming up on Google Classroom. We'll probably just touch on those a little bit, as well. Yep.
Fantastic. There was one other comment in here. Francine asked, can we take a bunch of pictures to create our own 360 series?
Oh, now you're getting interesting, Francine. I like your thinking. There is software. I don't know off the top of my head specific ones, but there is software that will stitch different photos together, but that's kind of what Street View does. What it actually does is it shows you where to hold your phone so that it does stitch properly together, if that makes sense. It's kind
Street
of
View,
like...
that's where I'd start, just the Street View app on your phone.
It'll just brilliant.
Get you through the process.
Android,
Yep, fantastic.
Chris, can you just put up that feedback form too? I think it's the last slide maybe in that deck.
Yep.
Look, if you get a chance just to spend a couple of minutes, I love feedback, stuff that I can improve on, but obviously stuff that you got something out of this session that would really help us going forward as well.
Yeah, the URL is there. It's just bit.ly/distance learning series, capitalized D, L, and S. And we love your feedback. In fact, I got to say, guys, I know a lot of people have been coming into these webinars. We've had some really good numbers for the last few that we've done. People like coming to them. People like getting a lot out of them. You can tell in the comment stream people are sort of learning a lot. But not a lot of people are filling in the feedback form. So we'd love you to fill in the feedback form because it really is, feedback is a gift. People like Paul really appreciate getting some feedback so he can fine-tune and iterate. But we love getting feedback as well as Google, because we're sort of hosting all these. So please do take a moment to fill in that feedback form. We really, really appreciate it.
And Louise, it is almost 11 p.m. your time, so you are one committed educator. So well done to you. That's amazing.
All right.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for coming. Thanks, Francine.
And I guess
thank you.
On that note, Paul, we will give you an early mark. We'll give our viewers an early mark. I think you covered an awful lot of ground there, so thank you very much for doing that.
My pleasure.
They're a great couple of tools, and my bag working with kids. I was originally an art teacher, and then went into digital media and stuff. So this is totally my scene, is working with websites and VR and photos and all sorts of that cool stuff. Kids just love it. So
they do love it.
Yeah. So glad.
Good on you. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.